Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast. And oh man, it's not a normal episode. It's not a record club. It's not even the 1991 retrospective. It's a retrospective.
What the hell is it?
For a band.
It is a retrospective for a band. It is the Radiohead Retrospective. Welcome, come one, come all, to the Radiohead.
As you are.
As I want you to be. And now we're doing this. This is a very unusual thing.
Oh, brother.
The Radiohead Retrospective. Why are we doing a retrospective on Radiohead? Well, we were doing a 1991 retrospective. Basically, we've been talking about records from the significant albums from the year 1991 that are celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. And we tried to coincide it with their anniversaries and stuff. And so we've done about, I think, 7 or 8 1991 retrospective videos. And we're basically at a point where there are no more anniversaries until late August. So we have a gap, and we decided that we wanted to fill it with another retrospective to talk about maybe the most significant band of the last 50 years in terms of just music culture and influence, probably undeniably, I would say. And a band that certainly the internet is saturated with discussions of Radiohead, so I feel the need to justify why we're even bothering to do this. And I think a fair way of saying that is that on YouTube specifically, it's very easy to type in Radiohead and get a lot of Radiohead reaction videos, Radiohead this, Radiohead that, Radiohead circle jerk, Radiohead whatever. And look, Jake, Morgan, and I, we're big Radiohead fans, unabashedly. August is new to Radiohead. So that's another reason why this was going to be a particularly interesting idea for us, as a kind of experiment to see how one person responds to experiencing the oeuvre of the most significant band of the last 50 years in real time, more or less. And so what we're hoping to do is provide a refreshing, unpretentious, honest perspective on these Radiohead records. If there are Radiohead records here that we're not as huge on, we will be upfront about that. We're going to avoid doing a Radiohead circle jerk while at the same time giving these great records, and some of the ones that maybe aren't quite so great, their fair due. And also reflecting on the place of each of these albums in music culture. Because even a record like Pablo Honey, although certainly to the least extent of all of the Radiohead records, has an influential place in music culture, or at least has a contribution to the story of music. And by the time we get to OK Computer, basically every album from then on out in some way affected, changed, had an influence on music in general, which is an incredible amount of power for any single band to have, and also a good reason for a podcast like us who discuss music, the cultural place of music, why music works. I mean, it was in a certain sense, yeah, it would be easy for us to ignore Radiohead because they're so talked about, but also they're talked about because there's a lot to talk about and there's a lot to get into. Jake and I recently read Stephen Hyden's book on Kid A in the 20th anniversary of that record and the significance of it. And obviously that's a discussion for 4 weeks from now when we get to it. But it's a good example of how the influence of Radiohead, their music, and their impact on culture, there's a lot to unpack there. And basically with this retrospective, we're going to do our damnedest to unpack all of it. We'll be talking about all of the albums. We'll be talking about as much as we can as well, the bonus material related to each album cycle too, because we don't want to ignore the relevance of a lot of that stuff. And we'll be reflecting on the records as we progress through this retrospective. And then by the end of it, of course, we'll be ranking the records and giving our favorite Radiohead songs, as we normally do when we talk about full artist discographies and single videos. But who are Radiohead? Let's start from the top, although I'm sure if you're watching, you're already well aware. Radiohead are an English rock band originating from Abingdon in Oxfordshire in the UK, forming in the late 80s. They consist of Tom York, who is the vocalist, of course, and also plays guitar, piano, and keyboards. Johnny Greenwood, who is the lead guitarist and also famously plays a lot of various instruments throughout the discography of Radiohead. His brother...
The Glockenspiel.
The Glockenspiel. Let's not forget the Onde Martineau, which is my favorite instrument.
I couldn't remember if I wanted to.
His brother Colin Greenwood, who plays the bass, and of course Phil Selway, the drummer, and of course the famously forgotten Ed O'Brien, who also is a guitarist and multi-instrumentalist, whose contributions, of course, are vital to a lot of Radiohead's music, even as much as ignoring him is kind of a meme within the Radiohead
Notably,
community.
the only human member of Radiohead.
Well, yeah, the other meme is that he's like the only attractive member of Radiohead, which is
I don't know. Young Tom York's got something going on.
I mean, I don't think he does.
Yeah,
all right then.
But he's a great
I'll
great
just fucking
artist.
shoot myself in the face. Fine.
I mean, certainly in his bleach blonde era, he maybe still had some working out to do in terms of his look. But I mean, he definitely had a point in Around the Bend's OK Computer where he was, I guess, at his peak in that regard.
This retrospective is really about us ranking the eras of how Radiohead is hot or not now. So enjoy that.
Well, my
peak hot Tom York is in Rainbows Do Not At Me.
That's a good take.
You're
actually.
right.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like. Yeah.
Yeah. So, just for
August nods homosexually.
From the outset, the hotness ranking is Ed first, then Colin, then Johnny.
Really? The motherfucker that looks like a Gallagher brother?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Ed is the only one I find conventionally attractive, which is not to say I don't find
Noel, call me.
Which is not to say I don't find the others attractive, but they're unconventionally attractive. Ed, then Colin, then Johnny, then Tom, and then Phil is actually a really handsome guy, but he's just bald.
Fair. I can't fault you in the slightest.
And he's a great drummer. Don't get me wrong. And also worth mentioning, we won't not really much point talking about him today, but he'll become a fixture of all of our discussions as producer Nigel Godrich, who I believe produced all of their records except this one, I think, the first one, and is incidentally hotter than every member of Radiohead. He's a good-looking dude, I think. I mean, they're British. There's a fucking ceiling here.
What does that have to do with anything?
Motherfuckers be
They're
named
British. They look ugly. Fuck them all.
Saoirse's actually not here because she quit because Tyler is comically prejudiced against Brits.
Forget I said all that. Look, Saoirse, we do have, if you're new to the podcast, we do have a fifth member as well, Saoirse, who normally joins us but is absent this week.
She's the Ed O'Brien of the podcast.
Absolutely, undeniably British. Okay, so we've established who Radiohead are. They met at Oxford. They formed a band. They were originally called On a Friday, was their original name, but eventually they chose the name Radiohead. And of course, some of you will probably remember or be aware from just general music knowledge where that name comes from, which is a B-side, not a B-side, but just a deep cut from Talking Heads album True Stories, I think. It's on that album.
So. It's one of the weird albums.
Yeah, it's not like a particularly good or like high level Talking Heads song, but it's a great name for a band. So no wonder they chose it. And so they emerged into the scene, into the alternative rock scene at a time when grunge was peaking, basically. Was the time that they recorded their debut release, which was the Drill EP, and eventually started work on their debut album, Pablo Honey. And so the grunge scene was happening in the US, but of course, in the UK, this was the cusp of Britpop, which hadn't quite yet exploded, and was on the fringes of happening, basically. And so Radiohead's early era often kind of gets lumped in with Britpop, which is hilarious because they're not Britpop at all.
Nope.
But in terms of just like, I guess, the scene that they're happening in, Pablo Honey, though, is definitely, in terms of those two things that were happening, definitely far more influenced by the grunge scene. If you want to draw a closer to home comparison, you could perhaps even compare them to what similar UK bands like the Manic Street Preachers were doing at this time in terms of their instrumental approach. Although Radiohead at this point with Pablo Honey were, a younger band, not that much younger than the Manics, I guess, but they hadn't quite found their focus yet in the way that the Manics seemed to do just instantly. And so their early period was a case of finding their sound. But what happened in the process of finding their sound and the process of releasing Pablo Honey is quite interesting, because despite the fact that most Radiohead scholars or most like 90s music scholars will tell you that Pablo Honey is not exactly one of the highlights of that era, and we'll get into that. What is notable though is the song Creep, which became one of the biggest songs of the 90s. And perhaps Radiohead's most enduringly popular song, generally speaking, which is, of course, a source of great ire to all of the members of Radiohead who don't look on it particularly fondly anymore. And but I don't know necessarily whether it's that they hate the song or whether it's just that they feel so distant from it and all the emotions that it represents and everything about it, that they just don't. It's awkward and embarrassing, like being an angsty teenager and finding your angsty teenager diary, and now you're like 20, 30 in your 30s and you find it and it's just like, cringe, I don't want to look at it. But the thing about Creep is, and I don't know if this is going to be a contentious take, but Creep is a fucking great song. It just is a great song. I'm curious, maybe some of you disagree with me, but Creep, I think, is one of those singles that has an enduring legacy. I heard it, I put it on in the car yesterday, and I was really struck by what a great grunge-esque, it's not really grunge, but like it's a pop song basically, but it incorporates those elements in certain ways. It is a song where you do have very kind of weepy, heart on sleeve imagery. Your skin makes me cry. It's probably the worst lyric that Tom York has ever written, in my opinion. Well, at least there's a few contenders on this record, but look,
imagining
aside,
Tom York touching a woman and just instantly falling apart.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the song is about. It is an anthem to being an absolute loser, a loner who is incapable of clearly communicating like a real human being to the object of his affections. But also there's a real emotional catharsis in it. It is pathetic, but it fully embodies that, and that's valuable, I think, to have that. Like, there's plenty of great music that has that. And Creep, I think it's easy to, because of how saturated Creep is in the culture, it's easy to, I guess, overlook it or reduce it. But I think that it's an enduring and successful song for a good reason, and that is that it is memorable. It's very catchy. It is just so earnest and so completely devoted to that earnestness in a way that is maybe a bit uncomfortable, but just totally admirable. And it really does represent its time in a certain way. And also just, it goes. When I think about this particular Pablo Honey era of Radiohead, it certainly isn't Radiohead fully formed. Even Creep is a weird thing to be Radiohead's biggest song, because, as I said, like, it's so unrepresentative of even how they would sound on the next record. But when I think of this era, I think of that thing that Johnny does in the lead up to the chorus, which is my favorite musical moment on this whole record. And it perfectly encapsulates, it's a nice, neat little encapsulation of what Radiohead were at the stage and what they were going to be. It's that they were at this kind of loud, noisy, but really kind of smoothed out and processed and radio-friendly pop band, while also kind of being really uncomfortable with that, and also kind of showing the seeds of moving beyond that in terms of the way they were using their rock instrumentation. Like, those chugging noise bursts that Johnny introduces would not be in this song if it were performed by, any other kind of band. It's a hint at the desire they have, or like the inclination they have to move beyond the kind of standard formula. So yeah, what do you guys think of Creep? I mean, maybe I'm fucking just affected here by nostalgia, but to me, the song holds up.
I'm glad you have strong feelings about, I mean, not actually, I'm glad to say you have such strong feelings about it, because I was worried I would be the only one to offer a mild defense of the song, and that I do like the song. That said, it's not even like top 3 on the album, and I'm not offering any hot takes on the album.
It's not top 50 Radiohead songs.
Oh, no.
Even for me.
It's not top 150 Radiohead songs.
the thing is that it definitely has this reputation for like being what it is and encapsulating it, and I think the band probably hates it more or less because, at least like the impression you get when you at least when I read Stephen Hayden's book, is really that Creep is basically indirectly responsible for Pablo Honey as a whole being so successful. They just, like, the studio just wanted to rush out an album so that they could capitalize on the success of it, and that's why they view Pablo Honey being as like little more than a demo tape that they are anchored to success wise, and they kind of resent that, which I completely understand. But Tyler's points about it being a pretty good pop song, and about how it's like, it's just, it works very well to accomplish its goal, in my opinion. Yeah, it is a little cringy. It's a fine song, but I think, there is something about its emotional honesty that'll speak to somebody if they're in their younger years. I know it certainly did me when it came out, or when I listened to it. I wasn't fucking alive in 1993, Jesus Christ. But that said, it's just like, I don't really have like, I don't really understand thinking that like some people could be like, oh, it's like one of the greatest pop songs ever. But I also don't understand like it's the worst Radiohead song, or it's just the worst song ever. It's like, it's fine. It's good.
Yeah, it's worth saying that even when Creep was initially released ahead of the album, like the general reception was reasonably frigid. They were called Nirvana Light, which is pretty, harsh. I think there are definitely things on this record
so inaccurate.
And I definitely think there are things on this record that they try to do that are that distinguish them from that. But also, like, it is inaccurate, but it's also like not a million miles away. Like, you have to remember this is a time when this is like right in the time when Nevermind has taken over the fucking world. It's like, it's like if someone released a jazz rap album in April 2015, you know what I mean? Like, people are gonna bring up To Pimp a Butterfly, and so this is the case where it's like Radiohead put out Creep, Radiohead put out Pablo Honey, and everyone brings up Nirvana. What I think is interesting about the record, and just in terms of like Radiohead's musical approach at this particular point, is that I think you can see influences that are far broader than just grunge, that are perhaps not as immediately apparent, but definitely feed into the music and perhaps become more clarified on the bends and then eventually kind of disregarded completely. Like, to me, I think a lot, especially just knowing how Tom York has spoken very explicitly about the influence of this band, that I think you can even hear in some respects how indebted Radiohead in '93 are to a band like REM, who make obviously a much different style of music, but Michael Stipe was a hero to Tom York, and it won't be the last time in this retrospective that I bring up Michael Stipe specifically as a point of influence and inspiration. And though the similarities are not readily apparent, the angsty York, I think, took a lot in his expressive style from that ghostly, angelic vocal of Stipe, and even more so from the spirit of the alt-rock bands that preceded Radiohead. The band REM's dreamier style, I think, comes up in some of the Buck-esque jangles that slink from Ed O'Brien behind Johnny's grungy crunches in a song like Stop Whispering, and they come to the fore on the pleasant but middling liturgy as well. Another reference point that I think is reasonably strong on this record, and also considering this band's cultural capital at this particular time, is U2. Particularly in the more ambitious, soaring moments of this record, where the band try to be both anthemic and heavy. Achtung Baby, I'm sure, was no doubt on rotation during the writing process. Of course, Radiohead just simply don't have the focus and, as you say, Jake, the real time and inclination to move beyond that, or even execute that in a way that's more than just derivative. But there are still like parts here where, like, Stop Whispering, for instance, you get the influence coming through, and that song being, I think, a little more successful on the record because of how you really get a sense of Tom reaching in his vocal melody there. You get a sense of the anthemic vocal that he would come to use to great effect throughout the 90s before his voice and the way he uses it would shift completely with Kid A. But anyway, to zero back to Creep,
Yeah,
this is
I
also
was gonna
like,
say before we get to the album, I want to hear what August and Morgan have to say about it too.
yeah, and I'll just zero back and bow out by saying that that anthemic quality is again on full display in Creep as well. Like it's that soaring vocal at the climax of this track. Like it is something that Tom leans on in a really heavy way here, and is, which is, I think is interesting considering where the band would go and where Tom as a performer would go from here. But yeah, I definitely am curious to hear August and Morgan on Creep.
Creep is actually a song that's at the center of a very positive memory for me. I remember in school actually singing this song in a math class with some friends of mine because it was just one of those songs we all knew the lyrics to back in like sophomore year, and it being a song that I think we all got to a certain extent and found very charming. So I went into this with that experience, like, okay, I expect to at least enjoy this, and listening to this, I was like, oh my Jesus Christ, shut the fuck up. I love the musicality of this. I like the part that's Tyler's mentioned, but the writing I really can't stand on this. I find it so overwrought emotionally and overbearing. It feels smotheringly eye rolling in that sense. I really didn't find myself having a very positive reaction to it, quite honestly. It's like I'm different from the other girls.
August,
you.
you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck you.
Totally is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's impossible for me to evaluate the song from a fresh or unbiased perspective. I remember when we were talking about 3 Days Grace, it said that was the album that defined my 8th grade. Well, this is the song that defined my 8th grade, and I never ever want to hear it again as long as I live. I've heard it so many times that I could sit here and recite you the whole thing, not just the lyrics, but every single piece of instrumentation within it. And I don't know. Again, it'd probably be a fine song if I heard it for the first time now. But also, it just reminds me of being a lecherous little shithead who doesn't know anything about talking to other people, much less women. And I hate it. It makes me feel gross, and I don't like it. I left this behind a long time ago. Why am I listening to this?
Yeah, I think I definitely understand that, and that's a feeling I've had about the song for a while too. I can't give you a real reason why that's changed. Perhaps just distance from it. But I mean, even then, I know with a song like this that's so ubiquitous, it's really like it dominates basically all of our experiences with it. But I think where the song lands for me, and I guess where it falls off for others, is that it's not really a song about being pissed off that you can't have someone. It's a song about being pissed off that you are the way you are, basically. Like, and I can relate to the sentiment in the song, and perhaps, and is very like high school about it. Like it's very, it's all of those things, but it has a charm to it. And I think that the way that Tom builds the emotion in the song, I'm not talking about the lyrics themselves, which I agree are pretty kind of not that good, but the way he kind of builds the emotion in the song to that kind of beautiful climax where he's just kind of like bellowing is beautifully well done. And I think that perhaps it's also just in terms of context with this record as well, because to me it's easily the best song on this album, which I'm pleased to hear that at least one person disagrees with me on. Presumably, maybe all three of you do, but I think that
I definitely do.
I
Yeah,
think
me
that,
too.
but it's by far and away
Yeah.
the best constructed and most successfully executed idea on this record. But I'm glad I'm glad I'm the only person that thinks that, actually, because it's kind of a boring opinion to have. So let's get into it with Pablo Honey. And I'm sure I won't be the only one to say that I do think this record, despite what I just said about me thinking that the song Creep of all songs is the best thing here, I also think this record does tend to get a little bit overhated. And it's interesting to me that why that is. And I would love to hear if any of you have any other theories. But to me, what I think the reason is that it almost seems to be a way that Radiohead superfans apologize for their manic hyper praise of this band by conceding that they have one clear dud, like, yeah, Pablo Honey is shit, so you're right, they're not perfect or whatever. Or sometimes it's an even more kind of pretentious attitude where it's like, this record sucks, but it's also like not true Radiohead. Like they weren't really
It's a
Radiohead.
scapegoat so that people can look more reasonable of their praise and just be like, oh, well, they got that album and I don't like that one, so I'm not that much of it.
Yeah,
that's what I've seen it used as a lot.
But I've literally seen at least one person online say their debut album, The Bends. So like some people take it too far.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can claim that.
This is absolutely the first Radiohead album, and it's an important step for Radiohead. And this idea that this is like not a real Radiohead record because it's before they found their sound. It's both stupidly reductive and also like not entirely wrong. Like this record is a necessary and clear first part of their progression of their 90s run. The Bends is a clear step forward from this. I think easier to appreciate in light of this because it's very clear to delineate the ways in which it is an advancement forward from this in both musical and lyrical respects, especially, and I look forward to doing that next week. And essentially as well, like, and the reason why this relationship between Pablo Honey and the Bends is useful as well is because the Bends is essentially like a refinement of the core of the sound of this record, with added complexity in the arrangements and strength in the hooks. So to me, Pablo Honey is far from an anomaly in the Radiohead discography. It is just a logical starting point. Plenty of bands have them. Though also, it has to be said, and I wonder if August might speak to this as well, I do think there's basically nothing here that suggests that Radiohead would become a great band. Even if you think the record is good, like
if I guess I'll leap on that immediately. I think there's moments where it suggests they're better than this. Like I think the track Legree's slower, more melodic approach as opposed to what else is on here suggests that they could maybe dial themselves back in some way. But I also don't think this, but I would agree totally that this is not an album. And like, there's a couple of moments where they're trying something that's not like a bog standard, like grunge or rock, post-grunge structure. But yeah, I'd say if you just gave me this, and since I really just only have this, from this I cannot tell you what I think OK Computer is going to sound like. I have not the foggiest idea. Like that record's been so hyped up and it's like number one on Rate Your Music. And with just this, it's like, how the hell do you get there? I'm like so genuine.
That is a good question that we will answer in the next 3 weeks.
I mean, I know we will. I just think it's so fascinating to me, this being the debut. So like almost innocuous as it is.
Yeah, like that's another thing interesting about the Radiohead narrative is you watch them going from purely derivative to driving the future of music culture. Like they go from being singular at the back of the fucking music room, like imitating being Nirvana light or whatever you want to call them, to actually being like the like Velvet Underground and Nico style, everyone who bought a copy of this album started a band sort of thing. So it's interesting to see that. Even though I know these records intimately, I feel exactly the same way as you do, even without this narrative happening yet. It still doesn't really make sense, the leap they make, at least from my perspective anyway, within this trajectory, which again makes Pablo Honey, if not a great album, at least more curious as a thing. Yeah. And I guess I can see how
confounded.
I guess I can see how from that it's a record that people are like, so there's such a diverse range of opinions on it. Like few people think it's a masterpiece, but some people think it's the worst thing ever made, and some people think it's unfair and underrated and all that sort of thing. Like people there's a whole spectrum of opinions on Pablo Honey that I think are purely a result of people's inability to reconcile this record with the stuff that would follow it.
Yeah, I think of it, if this can momentarily become the Rubber Gum Anime podcast, this Pablo Honey reminds me of like the first couple of episodes of Ava.
I knew it. I knew you were gonna go there.
In comparison to the end and the last parts of the show, it's like, okay, all right, that didn't go the way I thought it would. And similarly, August is now in the exact position with Radiohead that I am with Ava, except that August is going to listen to all of the Radiohead albums, and I'm never going to finish Ava because I don't want to.
Oh,
so that's just
not a bad comparison, though. I think that hits the nail on the
slice
head.
of.
That's an interesting prospect. I will give you that.
I think it's comparable to, and not just because of the sound, but I think an ethos is that it's comparable to an album that we've covered in our 1991 retrospective, which this album definitely indebts at least to some of itself to, even though it's like the album in question isn't like technically grunge. But I think Smashing Pumpkins' Gish is a comparable record in ethos in terms of just basically like being the core, the sort of the center around it. And that, in my opinion, too, is also so emblematic of why Pablo Honey is viewed as the way that it is, at least largely like by the musically storied crowd. And Gish is viewed as not that. It's that everything on Pablo Honey is that, like, it's like Tyler said, there's no song on here, even like my favorite song on here, that would indicate that this would become what many people cite as the greatest band of all time. It's in many respects, it's just kind of like if you gave somebody like Help by the Beatles and you were just like, this is going to be one of the most influential like innovators in rock and art rock and tons of other subgenres in the future ever. And then they would be like, that
is the album with Yesterday on it though. So
okay, fair enough. It wasn't
as Yesterday the Beatles creep? No, just don't answer that question.
Yeah, I'd kill you.
That's the clickbait title to this video.
But I think the key line on this album that kind of, I think, unpacks basically why this record is, the way it is and just like I guess the desire for Radiohead to exist in this era, and Tom York as a performer before he kind of fleshes out his ability to like write in more interesting ways about more interesting topics, is the line, anyone can play guitar and they won't be a nothing anymore.
Yeah.
It's this idea of these five men knowing that music is their path to expression and music is where their talents lie. But at this particular point, they have yet to find the artfulness or find the focus or find the meaning in what they are doing, aside from just the desire to do it and the desire to, I guess, be recognized for it, which is interesting though, because like I say that, and the song Anyone Can Play Guitar is kind of like, the point of that song is kind of the opposite. Like it's kind of like a satirical inverse sort of thing about like, the desire for stardom as this kind of like, naive thing. Basically, it's like they're making this kind of commentary on that, while at the same time this record and then the success of Creep is kind of like representative of that for them. It's this interesting situation that they're in, where like Tom is like straining at certain points to write about significant things on this record. Like there are moments where he tries to take on like the government, and like the song Vegetable, for instance, which is like an anti-authority, anti-government anthem, where he's kind of like, the seeds of his interest in these kinds of topics is here, but the writing is just not there. It just comes across as like the whole central metaphor of I'm a vegetable, like just doesn't really land at all. And so it's like he hasn't quite found how to express the ideas he's interested in here, and it gets very caught up in those limitations.
Yeah, I think that's a fair estimation. And I also think that, like, well, I would say that this is a good showcase for like the evident and skill of the guitar playing at hand. That's, I think, the most consistently great thing in the record. Again, kind of another comparison to Gish in that sense, but you know, one is definitely a little bit better than the other. But I think that I mentioned it earlier, at least alluded to it, like probably in a much earlier segment, that this we're covering albums that on an individual song by song basis, I don't really necessarily think any of them are bad. I only have like the lowest rated song I have here as at a 2.5 out of 5, and that's I don't really care for Stop Whispering, frankly, but that's the lowest rated song there. And the thing is that every other song is like, you know, it's a 3 or a 3.5, and I have my favorite song at a 4. But and so naturally you would think, oh well, then you like this album a lot. And the problem is that once you take these individual good sounding songs that are, you know, very light, kind of fluffy, enjoyable things, and you stick them into an album and they all kind of sound the same, really knocks the album as a whole as an experience down a few pegs for me, just because it's like, oh my lord, it's such a repetitive record sonically. Like it's just the same, like, and not even like even terms of chord structures, it's just like these songs bleed together so very frequently that if you are not paying very close attention to the track list, you may not even realize that some of them start. I mean, it's just a very, very monotonous experience, and I'm not as consistently impressed with the musicianship as I could be to like carry something like that. My personal favorite song on the album that led me to be like, for a moment, it had me like, oh no, am I going to be the Pablo Honey defender? And my favorite song actually here is You. Look, this song is not going to like win any awards or anything. It's 10 lines. Actually, it's 11 lines, and one of them is but it's a simple song, but it's just like it has a rhythm to it. It has a drive that I think is like really, really infectious. And I was just like, you know, this is definitely simple, and it's indebted to its sound very, very firmly. But at the same time, as Tyler said, it just kind of goes. And then you follow it up with Creep, and it's just like, you know, I have my feelings on that song, but it's just like, it's still decent. And then the album after that just kind of wades in mediocrity for its middle slump. It kind of picks up in the last 3 songs for me. I kind of like I Can't. I think Lurgy's okay. And I'm a little fond of Blowout. It's not a terrifically complicated song, but it's like, it's that really big finish at the end that really like kicks it into gear for me.
Yeah, like my 3 favorites on this record are Creep, You, and Blowout.
Yeah.
I think Blowout is interesting as well, as one of the more interesting moments on the record as well, just because of what you get another glimpse again, like of Johnny's interest in doing things with his guitar that are more interesting than just the standard template. Like just the fucking loudness of the noises he creates with his guitar in that song are really interesting. Like I don't think the song is very good, like good as a whole.
Yeah, me either.
Those things are interesting about it, and definitely make it stand out. Like I couldn't tell you I've listened to this album probably at least a dozen times. This album is in my DNA as a person who's been a Radiohead fan since I was 12 years old. I could not tell you a single thing about the song Ripcord right now.
No, me either.
No,
it's a song on the album.
Yeah,
sure is.
Yeah, I wanted to briefly hop on the opener You, which I did like how that song used like kind of instrumentals and like instrumental breaks in place of what I think a typical band would use as a place to slap a chorus in. I thought that was a nice little idea. It's not like mind-blowing, but it's something, and it starts off the record on a quite positive note for me. And yeah, I have to agree with Jake's assertion that, like, Creep, even though I'm not a fan of it, I can at least acknowledge it as like a memorable moment on the album. It's like something where I know I'm in it, I know it's happening. But yeah, that middle section is a complete slog. Once Stop Whispering starts, I'm out of here. I'm gone. Take me to another planet.
I have an interesting piece of this is just an aside, but I have an interesting piece of information is that Radiohead gave a co-songwriting credit for Creep to Albert Hammond and Mike Hazelwood, who wrote and recorded the song The Air That I Breathe, which is a kind of a soft rock AM radio staple from the 70s. And what's interesting about that is that Albert Hammond is the father of Strokes guitarist Albert Hammond Jr. So the father of the father of the guitarist in the Strokes has a songwriting credit on Creep by Radiohead.
That's okay.
So
All
that's
right.
just an interesting piece of history that I just discovered.
Little bit of trivia for you.
This is a further example of nepotism occasionally making some points.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and I'll also come to the defense of, even though Jake doesn't really care for it, I'll also come to the defense of Stop Whispering, which I at least think, again, like I said it before, like Tom is more vocally expressive here, which I really, really like. I dig the progression of the song. It feels like an actually fully constructed song. It's the longest on the record, I think. And so
that's why I don't care for it, frankly, is that it's just a little too long.
Fair enough. Look, I don't have passionate enough feelings to
me
go
either.
with you there on it,
Go blow for blow.
But I mean,
Stop Whispering.
Also, this is a record that also has, I mean, I'm surprised this hasn't really come up yet, but I think the worst song on this record is Thinking About You, which
definitely not a highlight.
Which is formerly known as the song where Tom York sings about playing with himself.
Oh God! Oh, it's that one. Fucking Christ!
And also, just the thing about the song that I really hate, above and beyond that, is just how whiny he sounds on it. Like he's like, all the things you got and all the things you need. And I'm thinking about you. And there's no rest. And I'm thinking about you. And I'm playing with myself. Just shut the
It like I mentioned it, but it was like evoking fucking Weezer for me. That kind of shit. Where I was like, holy shit, this is some shit Rivers Cuomo put on the. It was like a demo for the Blue album or something.
Sounds like there are points of this record where it sounds like he's trying to be a straight Morrissey, and like,
no,
yeah, that's actually a good point though. That the Smiths are definitely an influence on this album.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. There's that jangly element that I said was REM-esque, and that's probably even more Smiths-esque. Honestly, you could definitely you can definitely tell that Johnny Greenwood was very influenced by Johnny Marr.
Yeah. And I think also on like a writing front, I think York is definitely taking a bit from Morrissey, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
In this instance, for worse. Like I know it's called a clown on Morrissey, but his writing in the Smiths is much better than York's writing on this record.
Yeah, you're not going to find any Smiths haters in this, at least among me and Morgan. That I mean, I don't know if August would or not.
And I guess we can't really fully appreciate this until next week. But it's really stark how the difference in quality and just in terms of lyricism alone between this record and the Beans.
Yeah.
Which again, the Beans isn't like their most mature record lyrically either, but like there's nothing remotely as insipid on that record as there is on a lot of moments on this record where
this album ain't got no street spirit.
Yeah, but this is the point at which I want to bring up. I don't know if I think August had a chance to listen to this.
I listened to it.
Oh, Jake, you did too. Awesome. So I want to bring up this point, the B-side. I think I'm not sure what single it's the B-side to. I don't really care.
I think it was its own single, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, it's even better. The song Pop is Dead, which is generally regarded correctly, in my opinion, as the worst Radiohead song.
Pop is dead.
Long live Pop.
That part, I was like, oh my God,
Jerk
this
me
is
off.
horrible. This
Yeah.
is the worst thing I've ever heard.
And it's of a piece with some of the lyrical interests of Creep as well, because like it's this idea of like York's resentment of the mainstream music industry basically and how it functions. And that's interestingly a topic that York would revisit on the song My Iron Lung on the next record, which we'll talk about next week. And the vastness of the difference in terms of how he approaches it on those two songs is hilarious. But also, yeah, Pop is Dead is a song about how shitty and 2D the pop industry is before Radiohead would then become like an integral part of the fabric of it with the biggest songs on their next few records. But yeah, it's just a really insipid song. I couldn't find it on YouTube, but there is actually a music video for this song as well. That is.
Oh yeah, I actually read a bit about this where Radiohead.
I can't imagine
the
that
band,
this is good.
Where like Radiohead the band have like tried to George Lucas holiday special erase that video from everywhere they can, which is why it isn't on their official YouTube channel.
As it shouldn't be.
I haven't seen it in years. I mean, I watched it as a teenager, I'm pretty sure, and I remember vaguely something about like a coffin or something, and like trying to like put it was very it was very heavy-handed.
Desk.
It was very heavy-handed, like Eminem's burying the rap game type of thing.
Oh no!
No, that's not really a fair way of saying it.
He
But
puts the coffin into the ground, and the grave is named Pop.
But look, to milk to milk something that looks like it's becoming a bit of a bit for me, it is duty. And
Duty.
I like how you give it like the Tony Soprano tongue.
Oh!
Duty.
Oh! Gabagoo!
Gabagoo!
Mozzarella.
Yeah, so that's
Tom York
Pop,
on this album be like Gabagoo.
So that's what Pop is Dead is. It's fresh mozzarella. That specific impression. Anyway, so back to the life of Pablo by Radiohead. Yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to add about this record or anything they want to talk about?
Yeah, I just to remark on the whole thing for a bit. It's so comically inoffensive, mostly.
Yeah.
That like I just find it so funny that most Radiohead fans practically force themselves to have a strong opinion on it. Like, it does not instill emotion. Like, even Creep, I don't understand the response to because it's so languid. It just kind of is there. The only thing that sort of signifies to me that this band was going to become something is Tom York's voice on You specifically, where he just fucking lets loose the sound of God out of his voice pipe. Like, Jesus Christ, why are you yelling? Don't stop. But why are you yelling?
Why are you yelling?
And that's sort of the only indication on here that it's like, okay, yeah, this is going to be the most important band of the next 20 years. And even then, it's like, okay, the guy just has a really great voice. Doesn't amount to much because there's not much here. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't have strong feelings on this.
It's like trying to guess how good Porcupine Tree would be if all you had was On the Sunday of Life. Like,
yeah, I mean,
this is a bit better than On the Sunday of Life, but
well, it's shorter, so yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's the classic case, really. Like, there's so many bands you could probably list off that have their Pablo Honey right at the beginning. But I mean, what I think is uniquely interesting about Pablo Honey is the fact that it was as successful as it was because of Creep. And just one last word on Creep, I guess, is that I guess I have to concede that it's not like a particularly great song in terms of its like construction or the things about it that are like musically interesting or anything like that. It is a pop song through and through. It is well constructed for a pop song, like it does that trick, but to me, a lot of its legacy and a lot of the way that it's connected with people has influenced the way that I feel about it as well. Like it feels like a touchstone in a way that I guess I could veer from resenting it or like being tired of it to kind of being like, okay, you know what, I'm feeling it today. And I currently I'm in that second place, but it is so difficult to really examine in any kind of objective way now.
The Benz kind of has that in the form of like it's a much better song, but I think the Benz has that in the form of Fake Plastic Trees in a sense.
Yeah, I mean the Bends. The thing about the Bends, you could say that about like 3 or 4 different songs on that record. Like I think.
Yeah, I mean they had a lot of popular single moments, but that seems to be the one that people remember on that one, or at least normal people remember on that one.
Yeah,
I mean it's like that's I think that song was on Grey's Anatomy at one point.
So yeah, that makes sense.
We'll talk about it next week as well. But to me, the creep analogy, although it's probably wasn't as, I don't know if it was as successful of a single as Fake Plastic Trees, but it was definitely a big single in terms of just like being a bit divisive, but it's more like High and Dry maybe, which is like, you know, more straightforward, more formulaic, for lack of a better word, and your mileage may vary.
Doesn't like High and Dry?
Well, I mean, I'm not pointing fingers, but we'll talk about that next week. I like it, for the record, but I'm predicting that August won't be a huge fan of that song.
For the record, I love Fake Plastic Trees. Do not misunderstand me.
Yeah, but I do think there's an interesting thread between like the big single here, the biggest single on the Bends, and then the biggest single on OK Computer. And obviously there is a difference there, but like the progression there and how those songs relate to each other is Paranoid Android specifically being the OK Computer one. One more thing I'll say is that just as another trivial aside is that I've only ever seen 2 incidences where major bands have a gap between 2 subsequent records that is wider than 1 whole point on the 5-point scale. And that one is the difference between, or in terms of like going up a whole point, one is Virtual 11 to Brave New World from Iron Maiden, which you go from a 2.46 to a 3.71 there.
Nelly.
And the other is Pablo Honey to the Bends, where you go from a 2.73 to a 3.84, which is quite a gap. So
astounding.
The Bends has the 3.8. God bless.
Yeah. As it goddamn should.
So we'll discuss that next week and talk specifically about what makes that record a leap forward from Pablo Honey. Perhaps even debate that if August sticks to his current rating of 3 stars, which we'll see if he does. We don't know.
All I will say is I have not heard it in 2 years, so it is very subject to change. And maybe it will, maybe it won't.
Also, just for our listeners, I said August is experiencing these records for the first time. He has heard the Bends before years ago, but every other Radiohead record he hasn't heard. So it's all going to be, you're going to be getting the seasoned, wizened perspective from us 3 old fogies, and you're going to get the fresh takes as well. So on that note, Pablo Honey, Light of My Life. Least favorite track. Favorite tracks also.
It's the confidence with which you say it.
Least favorite track, everyone.
Jesus Christ. What is happening? Where am I? What are we doing?
That's what Honest Cat is saying.
I'll go first.
Is this but a folly that we have thrust upon ourselves?
Folly adieu.
All right.
I'll thrust upon you.
Do it, bitch. You won't.
My 3 favorite tracks are Creep, You, and Blowout in that order. My least favorite track is probably, Thinking About You. Absolutely. And it gets a 6 out of 10 from me.
My 3 favorites are You. My least favorite. No, I'm kidding. My 3 favorites are You. I'll say Vegetable. I don't know. I like me some bar band REM, tragically hip sounding shit. So there you are.
August and I expected you to say some shit like, I love me some cauliflower.
Yeah. I was expecting that.
Well, it says a whole lot more about you two than it does me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna deny it.
My third favorite is Blowout. Love that Brian De Palma film.
Thank you.
There's your dumb fucking joke.
I was not doing it, but I left
Oh.
it for you.
Oh, okay.
By Radiohead.
My least favorite. I mean, fucking. Like I don't want to say "Thinking About You" just because it's so fucking insignificant of a song. So I'll say like "Howdy You" because it sounds like them trying to do like Generation Terrorist, Manic Street Preachers. And it just does no, don't do that. Stop.
Filler. It's filler.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, it is.
all right.
Millard Fillmore.
Morgan, did you give a score?
Oh, 5.5.
5.
Sure. Fucking whatever.
My 3 favorite songs are "You," I guess "Liturgy,"
You
and,
motherfucker! I was gonna make that fucking joke.
Damn, sorry.
And despite what I said about it, I'm putting "Creep" in my 3 favorites.
As you should.
And my least favorite, for the sake of originality, I'll say "Stop Whispering." And I give this album a 4 out of 10.
Jake.
I understood that, whatever that was.
It said blood.
Yeah, what is... Okay.
We don't ask questions.
My favorite tracks
Don't ask questions. The blood.
Don't go outside.
are "You" and "I Can't" and "Blowout." What is so goddamn funny?
The way you just said, like, I can't.
I can't. And my least favorite song is "Stop Whispering." I give it a 5.
All right, so that's an average of 5.1 out of 10. Some other records we have at 5.1 out of 10 are Trout Mask Replica and Daddy's Home. So good company,
Absolutely.
And that I never want to think about any of them ever again.
Well, they're all "Is This Music" core.
Yeah.
We're gonna review the bends this time next week. So please stick around for that and let us know in the comments below what you think of Pablo Honey. Do you think we were unfairly harsh on it? Do you think we were too easy on it? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know what you think about... If you let us know what you think about the bends as well, we could also read your comments in the episode. It's a thing that we tried to do a while ago. I just gave up on, but let us know anyway, just in case.
We're coming for you, Jack Antonoff. Your days are numbered.
Jack Antonoff produces Radiohead's 10th album. No, that would never happen.
That doesn't... I mean, I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, I mean...
The reason it won't happen is that there will not be a 10th Radiohead album.
I don't know about that.
That's a stupid thing for me to say, because if I'm right, you have to wait forever for me to be right, and if I'm wrong, then I probably will be wrong reasonably soon. So fuck me, right?
So then you might be wrong?
Something like that, yeah.
Rock over London. Rock over Chicago.
Holy shit.
Microsoft. Eat fresh.